judges also who will get 2 points for this seminar.
Speak up.
Can you speak louder, please?
She doesn't have
No, you can't louder.
Yes.
Okay, I can do that.
Quiet.
Char Mutschler is here from Oregon. She's, we're so delighted to have her here as one of the 2012. Thank you. That's better. He's a nationally accredited instructor of floral design. Clubs Incorporated, instructing flower shows, classes, symposiums, seminars, and workshops throughout the United States. She is the accrediting chair for Central Atlantic and New England regions. She's one of the designers featured in the new book, which I have, Designing by Types, book published in September 2008. And I want you to enjoy this because she's very fantastic, and you just can't help but make arrangements just like that when she's through.
Oh. Thank you. Let me see if I get this back. Easy as 1, 2, 3, right? Well, I've got to be down here so I can see my designs in order to talk to you. We'll get Elsina down. I want to tell you first off, this has been a little hectic to move in and out and in 15 minutes. And I had to have my designs done, and there was no place to do them except out in the employees' hallway. But we did well, very well. So we got them all done. They were very accommodating, and that was really nice. So tell your hotel staff we really appreciated having their help. Okay, Rose Arrangement Seminar. I know that you have had an opportunity or two to make some arrangements somewhere along the trail, and that you have experienced probably some not so good times with arrangements. We'll try to help you with that today, because I think arranging is great. And once you learn what the process is and the steps to take, then it's as simple as 1, 2, 3. So what I'm going to do, Betty is laughing back there. She doesn't believe it. So what I'm going to do today is, on request, I've been asked to tell you and show you the difference between a traditional line mass design and a modern line mass design. I guess because in a number of cases there have been observed traditional or line massed moderns that don't follow the qualifications of that particular style of design. So today I want to show you that there is a great difference in those two styles. But primarily the study will be on modern design. A lot of people have problems with modern design and what kind of materials and things to use for the design. And so I definitely want to point that out. So I'll go through the designs, and little by little we'll learn more about them and why and how come and what for about each design. Now this is an open meeting, so you will have the opportunity to question or to ask me questions anytime. Because when I'm on the subject, I like to be able to respond to what you're thinking about too. And so that would be fine with me. Now, another part of this seminar is going to be on how do we score or evaluate the designs. Do you have a problem when you are judging designs? Or you just go on and not realize maybe you're not doing it quite right. So we'll go over some of that criteria and make sure that we know how they're judged. And you know, it's helpful if you know how they're judged, even if you're just making designs for a show, like tomorrow. So it'll be lots of information I hope you can take back with you. If you need to have a few notes here and there, that's good, because we'll learn lots from this, I'm pretty sure. So let's look at the traditional designs. And we find there is, in our guidelines, there is a list of characteristics. That list then is what we follow primarily for making a traditional design. So if you see a design that doesn't really follow that criteria, then you need to make note of it if you're working in a show. First of all, we see that there is transition of materials, and I'll point that out to you, and that there is a gradation of sizes and other materials and colors and so forth. Those are some of the basic things we see with traditional design. There's similarities in the materials that are chosen for traditional design. Similarities. There is a geometric form. We usually work within a geometric form, whether it's a round sphere form or whether it's a triangular form, right or left, or if there is some other geometric form, vertical, cylinder, whatever it is. And so if we follow that geometric form with our design, then we are doing more of the traditional characteristics. The lines in traditional design will converge towards the center or the lip of the container if there is a container in use. So they all converge into one area of emergence. The plant material may extend over the edge of the container. Sometimes we're so afraid not to make the plant material go out over the edge, but a little bit just to make that transition from the base of the container to the top of the container. So overall, the emphasis is on a natural growth pattern. And so look at what the plant looks like out in its natural state and see if that natural growth pattern can be replicated in the traditional design as it grows. And once you have that radiation of materials, then you pretty much have a natural growth pattern. We do the opposite things, and I'll tell you more about the modern design. If we look directly at a line mass, then the direction of the line must be one direction. If it's vertical, all the material will radiate vertically. If it's horizontal, then the material will radiate out horizontally. If it's diagonal, then it goes diagonal. So it's one direction to the traditional design. It has height and width, and in the line mass, the width is a bit wider than the line design. The line is very narrow, all the way from the top down to the container and to the bottom. It too has a very naturalistic look to it because it's the way the plant material is supposed to go. It grows that way. And of course, the focal area will be the roses. Now, in all of our designs, the rose is the predominant or the dominant flower. There can be other dominants within a design, but the rose is the dominant flower. Usually there is a progression of blooms. Yes?
I just want to go over something you just said. You said the rose is dominant, but can there be other flowers?
Oh, yes. Yes, there's other flowers, but you know what? They're subordinate to the roses.
What?
They're subordinate to the roses. So your roses, that's why they say that is the dominant flower in traditional designs. Now remember, we're still talking about traditional designs. You will see in the line mass a gradation of size in the roses, in other materials, foliages, there is some closed space within the design itself. What?
Still talking about
Oh yeah, traditional. We haven't switched over yet. Yes, there is a gradation in size of plant material in the traditional design. Gradation in color, lots of times, will also be involved in the traditional design. And the line mass replicates that. The placement of materials is consistent so that there is just a little space around each of the main roses, let's say, and each of the pieces within that design. We don't want to see that crowded with material just jammed so close it can't breathe. So it wants to be a little bit open, even though you're keeping within that geometric form. A little bit of openness is very helpful. It enhances and individualizes each one of the blooms or the foliages. So we want to have a little space, and it's not nearly as much space as our modern designs. The rose, of course, will need a little more space the bigger it gets in the design. Also in our traditional designs, we want to make sure that there is a textural difference. In other words, it's not just roses. We want to see some other materials there to show the differences in texture. And so I will have several different materials in that traditional design. Now, arrangement number 1 doesn't really have the light to show you.
I'm trying to get the lights turned on.
Oh, okay. It could be the bulbs out. Who knows? Oh, that's the whole row. Okay. But I want to show you especially that transition of materials. You see the line? That is the first thing you want to put in your container, your line material. Match it to your container. Make sure it is the height it needs to be. And of course, the old rule is 1.5 times to 2 times the height of the container, or if it's a wide container. And we want to make sure that that top line material goes the length it should, because it's got to pull up to the very top. It's got to show that it tapers to the top area, the very top. So you don't want to put a lot of material at the top, because then it will be too broad. And we're talking about the line mass, but the line has the same thing with it. And so I started out with two branches of rosemary, and it's very fine foliage on it. So your smallest material will go to the top. Your smallest foliage material and line material will go to the top. Doesn't mean that the line has to be a fresh piece of material. You can have a branch or something else to be your line. But then you start adhering other materials to it so that it will transition down to the rest of the material. Now, I've got some small baby carnations in there, and so that's a little different texture, and that would then bring down another size, not only a different texture, but another size, starting with the small flowers. Now that leads down to another texture. If you could see the foliage, there is a foliage in there. Let's see, I used olive, little bits of olive branch. And there is a foliage that's a little bit larger than the rosemary. And finally, it gets to the roses themselves. Start with your smallest rose. Well, these roses came large. And so if you had just a bud at the very top, that would be ideal, because then you're transitioning to that size and then going down to the next size. So the next size then is a little bit more open than the first one. You want to see that gradation of size because that is what leads your eye through the design. You want to see that it is working and it catches your eye and leads you through the whole design. If you see a larger flower at the top, you're going to stop there, and that's not what we want. Oh, light, doesn't that make a difference? Great days. Yeah. Okay, now you can perhaps see a little bit better of what I'm talking about. Now, not only is it lengthy, vertical, but also there's width going back. You do not want to have the material just land flat and back, because what does that do? It stops your eye. You don't see the depth. And even though there aren't large spaces, you know there's something in the back part. You know that there's material back there, and it's filling out the back side of the design. And so now we have come through the roses as they get a little bit larger, and they're blooming out right now. But as they get a little bit larger, the largest rose should be near the lip of the container, should be down towards the lip of the container. And then we get to the largest foliage, that is camellia foliage, and it has a larger leaf around there. The thing about the large foliage around the lip of the container is that you do not want to make a collar. You know what a collar looks like? Lined up all the way around. Nice little line up of large leaves. Make them turn a little bit. Make them a little different spacing in between so it looks natural and it doesn't look synthetic that the collar would present.
You talk about on the bottom?
Yeah, right at the lip of the container. And so then finally we're down to the container. Now, lots of traditional designs use bases. And bases have been very handy and very helpful for our traditional designs. We like to see a little bit of base to lift the design up. And this is just a little block of wood that's painted with the black spray. Can you see it down there? There is one there. And it lifts the container just a little bit so it's up off of the table. And that gives it a little more space around the design itself. Now, you see the enclosed spaces, the closed spaces within the design. You know, as I was saying, they still need a little space in there. And there is an open space all the way around. So we say that's an open silhouette. It's good to have the container be more neutral in color so that it does not stand out too much. If you had, in my case here, if I had a red container or a bright orange container, then you're going to be looking at the container instead of the design. And we want you to see the design. So that would be the reason for that. And also, from your viewpoint, you were looking a little bit up plane to the designs. But then we want you to see the design, so that's why they're on the staging. If they were at table level and you were going along in a show viewing, you would have a different view, wouldn't you? You'd be looking slightly down into the design itself. So if you see some things from looking up, that's because of your view. I made them as I was standing, putting them together. Okay, now, what would you say as it's coming down? I know you aren't seeing that over there very well. As it's coming down, what would be the focal area? Right close to the lip of the container? That's where it needs to be, the focal area. We used to say, well, that would be a bullseye. Well, it's not, because you've got other roses right close enough to it to lead your eye out of that 1 or 2 or whatever it is. So don't put them so close together that it does form a bullseye. Let them have a little space and lead you in through the design itself. Okay, any questions?
I know it's important on line mass to have the uppermost rows to be a bud. How offended should we be if somebody has obviously plucked it to make it a bud?
I wouldn't be offended at all.
Okay.
It's the size that counts.
Right.
It's the size that makes the design itself, that transition, that gradation. And unless it's a really bad tearing away, you can, you know.
Sure. No, I mean actually where it can be very cleanly done, but it's obvious that it's sandstone.
It's not horticulture like in your horticulture show. It is a design, and we need to have the size be more important. The size. Yes. The question is, what if you noticed that the top rows had been petals plucked off of it to make the size? Okay? And did you hear the answer? Size matters, because you're in transition and you're trying to get a gradation of size.
I would say from a judge's point that something like not a neatly plucked petal or two.
That's what I was asking.
It would get down to a real nitty-gritty, and it might be the difference between 1 and 2.
Yes,
But
yes.
it's not something you're going to say, look at it immediately and.
Right. We do have condition of roses. And when we start looking at the point scoring, I will look at that. But those are the kind of things we go back and look for, the little teeny things that might make a difference between two designs. There was a question back here.
I noticed that you have odd number of roses in your design. Is that the appropriate number?
You know, that's a question that somebody asks every time. And my answer to that is the number of roses depends on the balancing. Whatever else you have to balance, counterbalance. And I just happen to have an odd number of roses. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Actually, I've got 6 roses in there. You don't see the one in back. But that, again, was to create a little depth and a little color way back in it.
Char?
Yes?
I wanted to go back to the bud and just comment that actually that's being created by making a bud out of something. Bloom. And I think we forget sometimes that there are the same number of points for design as there is for roses.
Yes. You're talking about the 30 points?
35.
35 points. Okay, so what I do is I say 35 points for condition of roses. But it also says it's condition of other material. So how much is going to be condition of other material and how much is going to be condition of roses? Well, the majority of those points is condition of roses. And so you could say maybe 25 is roses and 10 is other material. Don't forget that, because we tend to lean on one thing and forget the rest. Okay? Over here. Jennifer. 2 questions.
Is that container really traditional? Because
Yes.
when did traditional start and modern divide?
Traditional started before the 40s. After the 40s and to about 50s and into the 60s, then we got into the modern phase. After the 60s and into the 70s and present time, we started working more with creativity in our designs and creative designing, and then abstract designing and all of those.
The second question
when you pull the petals off that top rose to make it smaller, isn't that actually then going to a different idea? You're distorting the rose?
No, it's not distorted. It holds its same form.
Right.
If it was distorted, it would be modifying that form, that natural form. We're not doing that.
Just went all right.
Yeah.
And what happens if I pulled all the leaves off and just left the stems? Is that?
Pulled all the petals off?
Yes.
Don't think that would.
Sometimes that is a really beautiful part of the rose.
Yes, I know, but don't do it in traditional.
Oh, no, no.
Is it just the direction I'm viewing that from, or is the line a little narrow for the base and the mass?
No, you want your line to be very tapered and thin at the top because this is a line mass, and so emphasis is on the line.
The line, tapered and thin at the top. A little
And then it graduates out to a wider space and down to the container width and over the container.
Standing in front. She wants to see it.
Yes, and standing in front and at a view where you're looking down on it. So you're not at an advantage in seeing it, really.
I have,
Oh, okay, over here.
on, you were talking about space, and you, went to the bottom of the basin. Did you say that you, raised the bottom of the basin?
I put a base
A base?
underneath. Do you see that block that's underneath? Yeah, because you're sitting down. Okay, there is a block right underneath the container. You don't want to make that too large because then it makes too much weight at the base, and that affects your balance. It also affects your rhythm. So you want to make it just a little bit larger than your container. And you could have even two thin ones that are stacked and show a gradation of size there too.
No, it doesn't have to be, perfectly, level pieces equal, or you could have like a pedestal.
It could be on a pedestal, sure. Yeah, it could be a compote. Not too good for traditional design. Just a plain container is your best source. And it can be an open container that's flat and it shows open water. We have traditional designs, especially one of the right-angled triangles in an open container. This has happened to be just a taller container. And so I just use that as my going point, the container. Now, any other questions over here?
Do you recall the variety that you use in the rose, the name of it? Oh, really?
Yeah.
Were Costco roses?
Some.
Oh, okay.
We just had to get some roses that we knew we're going to be able to count on.
I see.
And then we gathered some others. But yeah, and I don't know what that orange one would be. Name an orange one that you've got at home. Do you have an orange rose at home?
Sunstruck.
What?
Sunstruck.
Sunstruck? Caribbean. Oh yes, that would be close to Caribbean.
Tequila sunrise.
Ginger snap, yes, it's a smaller rose, but it's darker.
Sunrise.
Sunset's tequila sunrise, yes. So there are orange roses, but just because I use this one. Question back here.
You say, I'm not sure what I heard you say. Did you say it was okay to remove all the foliage from the leaves from the roses?
Yes, why not? If you leave all the foliage on, it's going to be a mess in there. And in fact, I remove the thorns because you know what happens? They will rip each other, trying to get it in and out and so forth. So take the thorns off, and I take the branches off in traditional, and I take the foliage off in traditional designs because you're putting them really close together. And you've got other foliage because you want to show that transition of size and texture.
Do you have to have rose foliage in there with it or not?
No, I don't. Mm-mm. The only class that you have to have roses only is the princess.
Yeah, but not,
No, this is just a regular traditional design. And most of our schedules will say traditional design, maybe it'll say line or line mass or mass. And so how much foliage you put in is up to you. What you think is too much would be too packed. Yeah, so.
you don't have to have.
You don't have to have, no. So in fact, the bottom of the stem, once you get the size of it, the bottom of the stem, I clean off completely. And then it depends on what kind of design. Now, like these here, I took all the foliage off. All the foliage off every stem of rose there, because I've got other foliages in there. I've got the filler material. And so if you can't remember transition and gradation, then think about filler material that you're going to put in addition to the roses. And it's subordinate, again, it's subordinate to the roses. So you want to have that transition.
Is that into Oasis?
It is. It's Oasis inside the container. I find that to be very helpful. Trying to get some other kind of maybe chicken wire or some other kind of mechanic in there is a lot more, cumbersome to do. Okay, now I want to switch you over to the modern design. And the next design is actually a line mass in modern design. You see the next one? Why is that a line mass? Mm-hmm. What, over here?
You have the curved lines of the material.
Uh-huh.
And the foliage is going slightly diagonal while the flowers are going almost in the form of a crescent.
Is the emphasis on line? Yes. Yes, the emphasis is on line. And that's what we're looking for. But you need to go to the other side of designing to find out what modern design is all about. And so modern design will look bolder because we're using less material. It will look commanding, more commanding, because you're using larger material for whatever purpose. And it is a design that there's more emphasis on space. So you see the big space in there? Yeah. Okay, there's space all around it, on all sides of it. And it's capturing space. But the line is still bold. So if you put a teensy-weensy line, it's not going to do it for modern design. You need the boldness of a line, especially for a line mass, because the emphasis is on line, but a little wider to include kind of a mass look. Okay, what else is it? We find there is unconventional placement. It's not the same it's not the same as traditional, using that transition of material, that change of size or color. So the placements are more different than the traditional design. And many people can't quite get through that change because they've started with traditional design. And I would highly recommend going through traditional designing, learning that before you go to modern designing. But there is a difference. So the emphasis is on space and depth. And you'll say, well, how do you get depth if there's a lot of space there? That space, you look through and find there is depth. And in this case, there is a background there which you go to the background and bounce back. If you have a design against a wall that has a lot of windows or pictures or something else on the wall that's distraction, what do you see? The wall through that space. And that's not what you want. You don't want the viewers to see that wall with all of its distractions. So bring them back to the design with a background. I'll talk more about the backgrounds too. Okay, now the modern design has more than one area, what we call more than one area of interest. It's not a focal point. It's an area of interest. Now, what composes an area of interest? Everything in a modern design should be essential, should be important to the design. So first of all, we have the roses. That's an area of interest. And then we have some foliage. That's an area of interest because that doesn't show the usual traditional transition. It's two large leaves folded into a different form. And then we have the line material. That's an area of interest. And a lot of times in the container is an area of interest. Now, you probably can't see this, but there is a design that is going up the container, very vertical, and then it catches on the roses and on up. So that rhythm is created all the way up. So we have more than one area of interest. The containers most likely are unusual, different than the traditional type container. And sometimes this is difficult for folks to find these containers. I just happen to be one person that I do a lot of traveling. And usually there is a potter or somebody in the area that makes these containers. I borrowed these from Dolores, so they're not mine. But I have a lot of them. And you know, you have to do a little research about containers for the modern designs. It isn't using a traditional container. That's going to be a fault if you do. All right, this container then has a design on it, and it has several openings in which the material is interjected inside and back out. So the openings help us to be more creative with where we're placing the materials. The placement then becomes a key thing to modern design. Unusual materials is also right along with modern design. Unusual materials, something that you find, like this is monkey puzzle vine. Now it's a tropical that's dried, it's a tropical vine that's dried, and it could be something else that's more available to you. So I was thinking, well, what if you had some flax, and I know that flax is growing down here quite a bit. What if you had some flax? You could certainly use the flax because it is a modern design material. It is not a traditional material. It is a modern design material. And it can be folded and it can be interjected. It can be a lot of different forms or shapes into this flax material in the place of something like this. So see what you have that can be used with this same way of designing. Put a slit. Easy. Okay, now we've got something very contemporary. And sometimes you want to put 2 or 3 together in a line. Well, that makes a very interesting line. Could be by line mass. So, just a slit. Get it in. Oh, come on. that make a modern design? Makes a modern line mass. Or it could be just a modern line. And it's so easy. So look for material that you can use around your home or around your community that would be convenient for you. It doesn't have to be exotic or anything like that.
What is the difference between a modern line and a modern line?
Oh, same as the difference between a traditional line and a traditional mass. It has a little more material, the line mass has a little more material, and it broadens out somehow. And so it involves more space in the modern design, and involves a wider base in the traditional design. Okay, so you're putting more material. You're using, let's say we take a line design, and you know it's a strict line design, whether it's vertical or horizontal or diagonal or whatever. It's a strict line design. And your roses and your other material follow that particular line. Whereas my line mass, you see how I put other material in it to broaden it out a little bit? Now we don't want it so big that it becomes a mass, but it's a little bit between the line and the line mass. And the same with the modern line. It's a very strict line, but the line mass becomes a little more material. You're using a little more material. Now you see I put a rose down here, so it carries it out. It makes that a very strong line. Very strong vertical line. If you have two different lines, let's say like this one has a circular line and a vertical line, you want to make one of those lines stronger than the other. More emphasis. If they have both of the same command, then it's a mixed signal. Which way do I go down this road? But my vertical line is the one that's really the boldest and has the most emphasis on it. Okay, so any questions about the modern design? Yes, back here.
That particular arrangement on your bottom rows there, how did you get it into the oasis at that angle?
Poked it right in that hole. There's a hole in the container. There's one right here, and there's one over here. That's what I say about modern containers. They may have multiple openings, and some that are not very obvious, like this one, until you put something in it. And then it begins emerging outside the side of the container or the front of the container. Yeah. Then it becomes less traditional and more modern. Now there are some modern containers that are super modern. They're very, they've got lots of openings, in other words. So if you have one of those or get one of those or arrange in one of those, don't put something in every opening. Decide which openings are your main ones you're going to use to complete the design.
With camellias, I've seen them do this waxing with camellias, and you can actually just lay them on your dinner table, wax, and they truly will last for almost a week.
Okay.
Everything is sealed. Is it permissible to try to wax a rose? I mean, you can't.
Not fresh. Not fresh, no. No. I mean, it's one of the things you can't modify a fresh plant material with some kind of spray or glitter or whatever. Yeah, and wax would be considered one of those things. Now, dried material, you can do that. Do whatever you want with it. Modify it. Okay, so what I find is we need to go back to the actual principles and look at them a little differently for the modern design. They're not quite the same as, I mean, they're not interpreting the same as the traditional design. The first one is balance. I always like to talk about balance because that is very meaningful to all designs. We know that a design needs to be stable. It needs to look like it's going to stand up and stay there without toppling over the top, or the base is too big, or some line is out too far, or something like that. So balance is really the first principle that is needed in a design. And for the modern design, we look at mostly asymmetrical. How many know what asymmetrical designing is? Asymmetrical balance. Okay, that's the off-center type balance. And even further than that, under asymmetrical is dynamic balance. Well, what's dynamic balance? Dynamic balance is when you have something that is in the design and it's counterbalanced by something else. So you have balance, counterbalance. You're looking back and forth, and they are weighing each other, but yet you have balance. And so let's look at this design right here. Is it balanced to you? Okay, it's not toppling over, or too much weight on one side, or whatever. Remember?
Does it always mean that it would be actual weight, but just the
No. Visual weight.
Yes.
Yes, visual weight. And so we're looking at balance, counterbalance. Now, it's not a transition of material like the traditional design at all. There's some material down at the bottom here, and then there is that little rose up at the top and a leaf at the top. We're looking at the spaces within that container or that sculpture. We're looking at the spaces and seeing if everything is in balance with each other. Balance, counterbalance. Balance, counterbalance. Whichever way you want to go. And that is more of a dynamic balance. Well, then we have a swish of the black material that's going over the top. Does that help your counterbalance? Going down, going down. It also helps with the depth because it is projecting out in front of the sculpture. And so you see space, but it is depth space. And that's what we want to have in the modern design. So balance has that push-pull tension that you see back and forth between the components. You need to have that because there are less pieces of material in a modern design, less than a traditional design for sure. And it's a control thing. It's up to you to control that placement. We look at placements that there is something perhaps in the back plane and something in the middle plane and something in the front plane. So there is not a flat look to the whole design. Your placement then will create that depth from front through middle through to the back. Rhythm can be any kind of rhythm in a modern design. In our traditional design, we're looking more at a consistent rhythm, following the material all the way through in small increments. And even in the mass design, we're following a very subtle rhythm between the materials or the colors. This modern design then gives us a completely different kind of rhythm. And it could be a stop-go rhythm. It could be continuous rhythm. It can follow different movements within the design. If we look at this next design here, we're seeing that the rhythm is mostly circles, isn't it? But then there is a contrast in rhythm with the black material going diagonal. And I'll tell you that diagonal is very, a very commanding line. You will see that and then get into the rest of the design. So for the more creative look, then you want to have different rhythms. And those rhythms need to be quick and fast-paced. The traditional design has more of the slower pace of rhythm or movement through it. But the modern design, you can go from the bottom to the top, zip, zip, and then back, or around and around, and then through it again. The visual activity then is created by the spaces and the solids and the colors and even textures would help you follow the rhythm of it. Doesn't have to be just straight rhythm. In fact, most cases in the modern design, it needs to have contrasting rhythms within it. But one rhythm, again, needs to stand out. One movement within the design needs to stand out more than the others. So you have that little bit of contrast there. And speaking of contrast, modern designs have a lot of contrast. But if you get too many contrasts, what happens? Yeah, it's jumbled. It just, you don't know what's what here. So you need to have strong contrast in the modern design, but you make sure that those contrasts are some a little more subtle than the others. And then in this design, let's look at contrast here. Well, I'm sure you can see a lot of contrast. What's the first one that jumps out at you? The black is contrasting with the rest. Well, does the color contrast? The color contrasts too. And in modern design, we want to have sharp colors, and we want to have very visual colors, bold colors. None of this subtle stuff.
And the shape, they're not even, they're odd number. Is that important too?
You know, I don't even think about that. I think about what is in balance, one counter to the other, counting the space as well. So, you know, it's got to equalize out through the balance and counterbalance. And then the rhythm follows those lines.
If you squint your eyes when you look at it, you'll be able to see that even more directly.
The rhythm? Oh, yeah. She said if you squint your eyes, you can see the rhythms within the design because they're strong. They're strong. There's nothing in between that is confusing that rhythm. Yes? Sharp colors, sharp contrasts, sharp contrast. And it could be a textural contrast. You could have a very smooth material with a very coarse, rough material. That contrast is interesting. That's what draws the interest to the design. And you will have more people commenting on that, and they may not know what it is. You know, they don't know that that's contrast is what's drawing them into the design. But our modern designs definitely have contrast, one to the other. In dominance, we're looking for the greater force of one particular component or one part of the design. Dominance, we need to have dominance and we need to have subordinates. So one thing needs to stand out. One thing emanates more energy than anything else. And it doesn't have to be a whole lot, just a little bit more. It's a little more forceful and commands your attention right away. Now, the best way to find dominance in a design is where you are looking the other way and quickly look back, and what hits you just like that? The orange roses? The black? Okay, it's everybody's preference. Whatever they feel is the dominant part, just so there is one thing that is more dominant than the rest. One thing. It could be the circles. One thing is more dominant.
I'm
It wouldn't show as much, no. No. And that's what the backgrounds do. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What are the materials exactly?
The materials are Bergina leaf. You see the Bergina leaf? I don't know, you probably can't see the one down there as well. That is Perfect Moment rose. The black material is saguaro, cactus, sprayed black. Yes, saguaro. It's spelled S-A-G. I keep telling Dolores, why isn't it pronounced saguaro? She said, it's saguaro. And of course, if you're in Arizona or in the desert, you will see the cactus. Well, these are the pieces that are left after all the fleshy material has been taken off or, you know, deteriorated. It's great, but you can't always go out and collect it. The pieces I have, I purchased from someone who had the right to collect. No.
But by spraying it black, it makes it stiffer, because it's stiff material to begin with.
Oh yes, it's very, very heavy, stiff material, and you don't bend it or modify it any. The thing with having it black, because black, I believe, is such a sharp contrast with the other materials that I tend to do that. And the reason is because I feel the modern design needs to have impact. And that will give the design impact when you contrast something black and stark like that with the colors. And really, the colors will stand out even more because of that sharp contrast.
What are the circles?
It's a metal sculpture, metal, and it looks like it was copper that has been changed to its patina.
And you have room to put your oasis in?
There's no oasis in it. This tube right here at the bottom is sealed at the bottom, so it has an opening on the front side and the back side to place material. Very handy that way. Now, I used this container for a presentation I did, and I had it for exhibition table, wasn't it? Exhibition table. So I had dishes behind the circles, not all of them, but I had plant material down below and dishes behind the circles up above. I don't know if I had any fabric draping around it or not. I don't remember. Anyway, I really liked the container, so I bought one for myself. But you know, these kinds of containers, once people see them, if you just can't use them in an area. But since I travel a lot, it's very helpful. Everybody will say, oh, I know who did that. Yeah. And we borrowed it, Dolores borrowed it from somebody else, not hers. So we did a little bartering there. Okay, so dominance then we find is very important too to the modern design. It has to be something that is really outstanding, hits you first, and it can be your what you feel is dominant, and someone else is feeling something else is dominant. It can be even lines that are dominant. Maybe there's a series of large curved lines, and that's a dominant part of the whole design because it's very, very interesting and it draws your attention right away. And of course, colors of any kind can be the strong thing if they are bold. If they are bold. You can make a modern design with more pastel colors, but I can guarantee you it will not be nearly as effective. So get those roses that have bold colors. All right. The last two principles I find that are very confusing to people. And I grade a lot of exams, and invariably they're writing out what proportion about a design is and what scale is about a design. Have no clue. I don't know why, because it's being taught. So let's look at proportion, the amount of. The amount of one thing compared to the amount of another thing. In other words, proportion is the amount of the whole design. How much does that take up? How much space does that take up? What's the area of that whole design? And compare it to a background, let's say. Is there any design here that is out of proportion to the background? Which one? She thinks the dark blue is? The dark blue recedes and diffuses the space, perhaps, a little bit. What do you think back there? The first one. I think if you're seeing it in front, you'll see the width of the design, but that could be a close on proportion. I agree. Anybody over here? Proportion is comparing the amount of. Now I have the amount of roses compared to other material. Is it in proportion, one to the other? We don't have to have a large amount of roses. Yeah, you can have one. But is it in comparison to the container, the amount of the container? Okay, if we're looking at the container here, is the amount of plant material in that container proportion? Okay. Dan?
Number 5, I think, is the one that is the most noticeable.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Right.
Yes.
And what makes it, and you have the least amount of roses, and what makes it work is how bright those roses are. So
Yes.
they dominate, and they seem to be plenty long.
Yes, and it's a sharp contrast with that blue. So the sharper the contrast, then the more emphasis is on the whole design.
It works particularly well, I think.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we see that proportion is a measurement of one thing to another in amounts and areas. So one thing to the other is a comparison. And then if we move on to scale, we find it's just sizes. It's a comparison again, but it's just sizes. Comparing one size to another size of something that's used in the container. And it could be that there is something that is out of scale, the plant material, or something would be too small for the overall design, for the other material in the design. So if I had, let's see, if I had smaller roses here in this one. Now I wouldn't use miniature roses, but let's say some smaller roses. Would that be in scale with the container? No. You could use more roses, and make more of a mass. But you know what? I don't want to use more roses. Why is that?
What I'm thinking of is proportion of one. If you wanted to use like a good compacted spray of a nice bright polyamide.
Oh yeah, a spray.
You know,
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm thinking polyamide because.
Yeah.
And then you can still get your breaks of color.
Mhm.
Because you, with the amount of flower, you can get more space between them and still get that impact.
Yes. So that's an area, and it probably would be a good comparison in proportion. Now, what about the scale of those little flowers?
But in bulk,
In.
you look at them and you've got one color.
Mhm. Yes. You're massing them close enough to where they then take in an area.
There are some plants that their sprays are more collected than others. Some of them you've got sprays that are quite wide
Yes.
and a lot of space in, and that wouldn't work.
No.
You've got something, some of the shrub roses
Yes.
have got nice collective.
Close, like floribundas more in a cluster than, now, see this one is a cluster. What is this one? Eureka, yes. So that cluster then composes an area, and yet the size is appropriate for the container and the other material. Not only do we look at the size of the roses, but we look at the size of the line material and any other components in the design. So that size comparison goes back and forth through every piece of material in the design. Every piece. We do not usually put bases with the modern design. Why is that? Takes away from the design. Modern designs need to be up into space, involving space. They are designs of space. They are art forms of space. So once you get a base underneath, that brings it down to the table. You don't want that. So just leave those bases for more traditional type designs. You know, there's a place for everything. And even Oriental.
Tradition is the one who
Needs the basis. Okay. All right, now I'm going to go through the designs and point out some other things. The next design here, using the cluster of roses, like I said, was an area of color. And compared to that area of the design container, and the green stuff is called mandolino. It's dried, okay? Mandolino. It's very flexible. It will twist and turn. It's wonderful. Wonderful to work with. Well, actually, I found it at the florist market. Yeah. So if you have access to the market, then you might find that there too. It comes in long strands, bundled, and it comes in this roll. And the roll is the one that I like because it's so flexible, I can twist it around. But that container is a pretty large container, flat face, smooth texture on it. I wanted to kind of bring that other mandolino down over the container so it doesn't look so brazen. And it hides it. But it also then emphasizes the movement of the whole design. You have a lot of rhythm in that mandolino twisting around and going in the back of the container. So you know that it's involving a lot of space around that container itself. And moving up through the design, and then the roses start taking over because of their clustering. I think if there were just single roses, it would not be big enough. The clusters really are what that particular design needs. And then, of course, you've got the line material. Unusual material, I think, I depend on a lot for modern design. Unusual, not necessarily something that's expensive, that's not available, unusual material. Now that is just like taking little bamboo pieces and wrapping a little twine or rope around it. Gives you a different texture. And so it would be kind of bare and stark if it didn't have that little rope around it. And so it brings back into texture changes.
But did you use that colored rope because of the roses? Because it
Well,
take up the same color basically?
yeah, pretty much. You want to see some communication between all of your materials, actually. You want to see that the one is supporting the other, either by color or texture or something that gives you that continual part of it. You're moving from one part to the other part. but they are more unusual. It's not the usual everyday kind of stuff. You want to do a little something to it. Now notice over here, if you can see it, the vine has wrapped wire, colored wire, copper wire. Do you see the wrapping around the you might not be able to see it over here as plain. And that is just a little bit of interest to the boldness of the line. Just a little bit of interest. And the copper blends in somewhat with the color of the vine, the dried vine. So it isn't like I put on blue or red. It's a color that blends in a little bit, doesn't look like it's out of kilter with the rest. But it gives a little more texture change to it. So do something to your material. Do something a little bit different, but not so big and bold that it throws it all out, so it doesn't look like it's in context with the rest of the design, the rest of the material. Okay, now, this one is a metal sculptural container. It's actually just 3 pipes that are welded together. 3 pipes. And perhaps you won't see them where you're at, but 3 pipes that are welded together and sprayed black. Again, it's my choice. I think black will do it. But by putting in the bundling of roses in one opening, and it's a closed bottom, so it holds water, and just putting the stems in. I don't have to worry about any other mechanics. The roses will hold in there just themselves for however long you want them. And the ribbon then, the green chartreuse ribbon then is an acrylic piece. How many have these? Oh, Betty, are you the only one besides us? Anybody else have an acrylic ribbon? Aha. Well, they're pretty useful at times, especially for modern designs or abstract designs. Pretty useful. Because what happens with those ribbons? They're so rhythmic. They carry that movement through one end to the other end of the design. And I find they're very popular. And they're made by a lady in Tacoma, Washington, Bremerton, Washington, actually. And she's made zillions of those. And of course, our folks on the West Coast have most of them. But she has a web page, and you can send for them. She does other acrylic things too. Joy 4, the number 4, JOY4 design.com.
What is the difference between acrylic and, say, French with the wires? It's much stiffer?
And the difference between acrylic?
Say the French, the French wire ribbons that you see there stiff.
Oh, these are very firm. Yes. You don't move these at all. Whatever curls and squiggles is what she makes. Because she has a process of changing that. They come straight, she cuts, and then she has the ability to curl those around.
So that is permanent.
That is permanent. So the task is to find a container that the ribbon fits. And if you have something like that with 3 pieces of pipe, or you can use PVC and put it together or whatever, then you can string that ribbon through. Now I'm sure there are other things that can be used. I'm just giving you one example because I want you to really get focused in on modern design and what happens with different materials. So if you can think of something that you find, now maybe it could be just a solid metal. I went to the metal yard the other day, scrap metal, and I found long bands of silver material, just a silver, I don't know what, aluminum I think it was, just aluminum. And I thought, oh, I could bend those. See? So go find things like that. Didn't cost much at all.
Did you bend it?
Oh, I haven't used it yet. But yes, I could. Yes, yes. It's just sitting in my garage waiting for me to do that.
Do those acrylic bands come in various colors?
Yes, they do. They come in a neon orange, they come in red and blue and green and yellow and pink, white, yeah, clear, uh-huh.
So you don't color,
Oh, no, I don't color. No, she has the material that's already colored and makes them. Yeah. She makes other things. She makes a lot of little miniature containers that are so great, useful. They are little miniature acrylic, and they have the little watering hole in it and everything. You just put your material in. It's that easy. Yeah, yeah. Okay, back to the principles. So what we see here is sharp contrast. The contrasts are really sharp, and they are, I think, carry the impact of the design. Is it showing that it's in proportions, right? One thing to the other. You're comparing the ribbon to the container, or the amount of floral material to the rest, and so on. And scale. Let's look at the individual sizes. The scale of, those are 2 aspidistra leaves that I've got up there towards the top. The scale of the leaves. If I had little teeny leaves, would that work? No. I need to have bigger, bold leaves to go with the whole design. So everything is working together and saying the same message. That's the whole point. Our last design, the last design here, I'm just so fascinated by these. It's acrylic though, isn't it? It looks like glass tubes, but they're actually acrylic. And they have such a reflection and such a draw of a material that is so neat. I really loved that. As soon as I saw it, I said, and then it's in a dark black container, so it shows a great contrast, and put on one side of that container. I didn't glob them into the middle or anything. I put them on one side so they carry the movement up through that side and then over to the red roses. The red roses then are still showing movement going on up further. Now there is 2 Aurelia leaves in there, but they have been trimmed into a round form instead of the pointed form. Trim things and modify the shape, modify something, the surface quality, and you are abstracting. And that is one of the parts of creative design that you can do, modern design.
Glass also. Those tubes is glass also is glass.
No, they're acrylic.
Acrylic.
Yes, but they look like glass. Now, one of those tubes is hanging over a frame. And here's where some of our schedules can and do specify that the design is using a frame or a framework. And I really like that because that frame should be giving you an area of space for your design. If you incorporate that frame, like mine is, by hanging the glass tube over, or the acrylic tube over, then you can go above it, you can go outside of it, or use it in the design. So the frame here then is an integral part of the whole design. It's part of it. It's part of the whole design. And if I removed it, it still would be a design, but by adding the frame and the other little accessory over the frame, then that makes a more interesting and continual design, because there's more to look at.
If you have no frame,
Mm-hmm.
just had a backboard,
Mm-hmm.
could you still?
Like these?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Could you still do just the hanging over the top?
Oh, yes, you could. Yes. What happens there? Yeah, but why hang one thing over the background? Because that incorporates the background. It brings the background into the design as a whole unit. If there wasn't the thing hanging over, it would be a background against which the design is seen, like these. And then all we do is measure proportion, the amount of the background to the amount of design. I think it's quite interesting to get things incorporated. And it doesn't have to be some big thing. You don't have to paint the whole background or anything like that. Just something that is attached to the background that is repeated in the design itself.
If you remove that frame though, you're flattening it, you're losing your dimension, you know?
There is depth in the design itself. It's just like these other designs. There's depth in the design itself. And it would be just shown against a background. But by using the frame, then you are including an extra element to that whole design. And yes, it creates more depth. It helps create more depth by doing that. Yeah, yeah, right. And actually, the lighting isn't showing with the blue background is so receding that it doesn't help a whole lot.
Without the frame, the design, let's say glass, the tubes, would they visually balance the darker on the one side and the mass of the tubes on the other? Or would that not work?
She wants to see. I'm just showing you what a frame could do for a design. And if your schedule says use a frame, it's not lost.
Way that you can put that bit of thing onto the back behind that
Yeah,
railing?
you can. But I like the frame.
No, I don't mean that. I mean actually on the container behind.
No,
the
no, no,
railing.
no, no, no,
I
no.
thought maybe there was a hole.
No, no, no.
Doesn't it still,
What's that?
doesn't it still balance the design because of the mass on the
Yes,
side?
yes, it helps with the balance, but the design itself, oh, I think it's balanced. Do you think? If you're seeing it up here at the right view, I think you'll see that the two foliage pieces here counterbalance what's over on the other side.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It still balances, even though the lighter is more massive.
But it's light.
Yeah, but the other side is darker, so it balances it out.
Yeah, yeah. Question back.
Tube up on the back like you're gonna do so we can see what that looks like? Just so we can just see the ad.
This is incorporating the background.
Yeah.
I will show this so it continues on. I think it has more impact with the frame. Okay. Now this is something
You'd say that if this was what you had, you didn't have a frame to put up and your class didn't specify it.
Right.
Wouldn't you recommend that since your schedule is written with no determined height, that you could shorten your background to keep, or your backboard, to keep it so your design is
In proportion.
proportion?
Yes.
Because with this, you've got a lot of space left at the
Oh,
top.
yes, yes, it shows a lot. That's what this diffuses that space.
What if you raised your base?
No, we don't do that for modern. Yeah, because then you're putting a base underneath of it or something underneath it, and it's causing more weight down there. Anyway, I would recommend that. Okay, so with the frame, then it brings that up involving more of the background space.
What if you took the frame, folded it back, so you have just secured a rectangular frame, put the other piece right in front of it, with that balance it off, and you put it to the side.
These are things you have to try. And then you stand back and look. And then you go away for a day. And then you come back and look at it again and see if you did it right or not.
I know how those boards, funny like that. Is that a good way of doing it, or flat on the back?
Okay, now it depends on what your schedule says. This is really a niche, okay? Because it has the wings on the side, a niche. And if the schedule says it just has a background or a background panel, you don't have these wings. You have to have, and these can be folded back, but you have to have a piece in between that holds them back. So it can be done, depending on what your schedule writer has put in the schedule. So know that there is a difference. So if it says a background and you put up a niche, you're going to get points off.
When the sides go out, are they supposed to go out straight
We put these out because it involves more space. No, it doesn't say. It doesn't say you have to do it either way. It's up to you as to how much space you have allotted for your design. If your design says you only have 24 inches wide, deep, and it's 24. This is 24. But by spreading the wings out, then I'm taking more space. So again, go back to your schedule. What does it say? If it's not in the schedule, do it.
Schedule right.
Yes, absolutely. Because that's your law, that's where it begins. And if you don't have a schedule writer that knows these kinds of things, back over here.
So regarding the second design, from this angle, the single ribbon candy piece of wood, you have the ribbon candy and then the circle, that almost looks too short in proportion to the container size and the row of
Now, which one are you
rows.
talking about?
The second one.
The purple or yellow?
The yellow one. No, the yellow backdrop. Number 2. It's number 2.
You're number 5. You're number 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is it this one?
No, the next one.
No.
The one close to the blue one.
Yes.
1, 2, 3. Is it this one?
Yes.
All right, what do you think?
That the wood piece, the straight wood piece, from this angle it looks like a ribbon candy. That should be longer, pushed up more, because it's not proportional.
Remember, you're looking up, and it really is proportional, because you have a line here that carries it on up. So it includes the container. And if you're looking at it straight on a table slightly down, you see more of the line,
Okay.
the vertical line. Plus, there is emphasis on that line, vertical line, with the roses.
Right, I was thinking of that.
Yeah.
And
okay.
so that vertical part of it should not be longer than the vertical roses.
Did you then just say that the line in a modern arrangement is also 1.5 to 2 times the length?
No, I did not say that. I said for traditional design, that is the basis of height for a traditional design.
But in modern?
In modern design, the line and other things are restricted from using a lot of material in between. And so they become bolder and look higher, and they're more exaggerated.
But there's no ratio?
No. No, and balance is right. Yeah, whatever balance is.
So, but you did say something about that vertical line and that arrangement as being, something about it relates to the container.
The container has a design that shows a vertical line. You have to look at it close. So that line then emphasizes the vertical line of the roses and the other line materials. It emphasizes it. And like I said, if you're at the right distance and you are looking at the right view, you'll see more emphasis on that. Very vertical.
Could it be longer?
Oh yes, it could be longer.
It wouldn't detract.
No, it could be a little bit longer. Yeah, yeah. Emphasis.
The squiggly acrylic, you buy that and then squiggle it yourself or not buy it?
No, she makes
Oh, that's from Joy.
Joy, you mean, oh, I don't know where you got it. The glass tube. What? The glass. Oh. I've not seen Joy do that.
Okay.
So I don't know.
The brown.
No, the glass. Question back there. I can't hear.
Oriental design.
What?
Oriental design, do you have any?
Oriental design. What about it?
Which one is?
I didn't do Oriental today. I just did modern and one traditional.
Yeah.
Okay? I did not do Oriental design. So
When I look at the website, they call different types of arrangements as oriental. So I'm confused as to which one is oriental.
Oh, not these. Not these.
But I just want to know how.
Whenever I teach an Oriental design, you'll know Oriental.
So, on the website where I can just look up what exactly it is.
She wants a definition.
No.
She wants a definition.
A definition? There's too much to Oriental design to give you just a definition. It does use material in its natural growth pattern, I can tell you that. Unless you're doing freeform, some freeform in Oriental. But just the general Oriental design follows natural growth pattern. But see, there's forms within that Oriental design that you have to follow too. Yeah. But Ikebana is Oriental. And we do in our shows, in our road shows, we do Oriental manner, which means we are not specific to Oriental design. If you've got everybody trying to do Oriental design, they do not have the training or the education to do real specific Oriental design. So we just say Oriental manner. And we get a lot of good-looking Oriental designs.
Written in book, is that
There is a book which I have designs in. There's a lot of illustrations. And what those illustrations show, and there is script to it, that tells about each one of the types of designs. And that would be like the parallel design, the synergistic design, the underwater design, frame spatial design, on and on and on.
Is it still in print?
Oh yeah, it's just new.
What's it called?
Where is it? What is the name?
Designing by types.
Designed
By types.
Is it for the garden clubs?
Yes, it's through the garden clubs, National Garden Club.
Or National Garden.
National Garden Club. And so it's a wonderful illustrated book. If you want to look up any one of the types of designs, like the underwater or whatever, if you want to look that up, there will be several designs pictured, all different, that show that particular type of design. So you get different views of what to use and how. Question here.
Could you please tell me what the material is that in the arrangement number 2 with the brown stuff, and then arrangement number 4, the thing with tall sticks? Yeah.
The brown material in arrangement number 2. Yeah, I said that was monkey puzzle vine. Monkey puzzle vine. There's a monkey puzzle tree, and this is the vine. And what other one?
And in number 4, those sticks.
This one? Mandolino is the green material. Oh, the cotton material is just a reed. Yeah, but it has a rope, a little fine rope wrapped around it. You know, I haven't seen any other colors, so I don't know. It probably will. This is probably dyed, and it probably will come out in another color. Okay, I just wanted to spend a little bit on, you had a question?
As far as it going past the niche, is that okay?
No.
Those two.
Oh, no, it's going, I'm sorry, I should have pointed that out. It's going above, enough above, and this is a background against which the design is seen, so it needs to follow the proportion of the background. And if it goes up above, how much are you going to take off? 23 points. She does. Yeah. Don't judge my design.
I take off 2 points.
2 points, sounds good. Depending on how much above. If it's just a little bit, you know, just bear with it. But if it shows a great bit, like my black one and on this, the purple background, that you know it's above. Okay? So you would have to ding me a point or 2 on
It's
this.
so cool, though. I mean, I like it, so I was just wondering.
But does it work the same way as if you've done too low?
Yes, then you're looking at the portion.
Right, using some of them don't look too bad. This one here, the other
If you were judging in a show, we've got a scorecard for you. We've got a scorecard for you to follow. Okay? And that means if you see something, then you look on the scorecard, now where can I take that off? Okay, under conformance, that means it follows the description of what is in the schedule. If it says it's a line mass, or if it says it's a modern design, synergistic type, then the design needs to follow that particular description. If it's something else entirely, and it's not for you to judge how well they did it, it's just did they do it. Okay? So 16 points.
When if they do a traditional and they do a modern, 16 off?
No, you're not listening.
I heard that.
Okay? Under conformance of 16 points, you have it divided into, are the roses correctly named? Okay? So you want to make sure on the tag that the roses are correctly named. If they're not, you you might take some points off there or question that. You better be sure that you know that they are not that particular rose's name. Or if there are several different varieties, are they all named on the tag? Sometimes they just put a couple names and there's yet 3 or 4 other roses in there. Also, the type of design, that's what I'm talking about. The type of design comes under conformance. Did it follow a particular type of design that was asked for? Or is it something else? In many rose shows, the directions will say, you name your type of design. And a lot of times people don't. I would rather it said, you must make a line mask design, or you must make a modern design, or something like that. And then it's a better deal, because you have all different types or styles of design in one class.
You really can't judge them. You really can't judge them appropriately when there's
I know,
four different
but how many
designs.
schedules, how many shows
I
have you
know, and I
seen?
don't think it should be allowed.
I don't either. So you in your schedule make sure that it is not saying that. You name whatever you want the exhibitor to put in the show for a design. Betty?
Tell these judges that they better get ready for a whole bunch of those.
Oh, yes, from the back. That's good, that's good.
Those what?
All right, then it says under conformance, other requirements. In other words, is there a particular size? Is there, does it say have a background? Does it say have a niche? Does it have a frame or something like that in the description? Those all count under conformance. And you have to decide how much of a fault is there in order to take points off, because you have 15 points to work with.
So if they said, put in a background, and you did, can you take off 4 points?
Sure.
And if they did a traditional and it's supposed to be a modern, or vice versa, you take off to 4 points.
More than that.
Right, but I mean, reasonable.
You've got, if you divide this up evenly, there's 5 points for each one of these requirements. So if it's the wrong design, style, or type, you got 5 points there. Okay? All right, then we go to... What? Oh, we got 5 minutes. Then we go to principles, and I went through all the principles already for modern design. Think about that for modern design. And then it goes to perfection of rose, and I think I already mentioned that there is the, what is 30 points? 30 points, and that you need to make sure that there is some points left for condition of other materials from that 30 points. It isn't all just the rose. And that happens all the time. That all the rose is the only thing that there are points taken off of. No consideration of other material, condition of other material. And you'll see bug holes, and you'll see perhaps some wilting of other materials, or all kinds of things. Right there is where it's supposed to come off. Creativity and expressiveness. Now, our modern designs take in much more creativity because we are working with creative ways of displaying that design. And so that it would be 15 points. You can divide that up between expression. Expression says, I am expressing the title of this design. And if it says, you know, summer sunset in the title, does the design express that through the materials that are chosen? That's not hard to do. And under distinction, the last one is 10 points. If you have taken points off any of the above for reasons, is it fully distinctive? No. No. So decide how many points you have taken off above to determine how many points off of the 10 for distinction. If you have a lot of points up above, say under design or conformance or whatever, then you're going to take more off for distinction. All right, that's it for today.